Welcome to our video series, Behind the Feast, where we focus on behind-the-scenes work at Digital Feast Studios. If you don't know a lot about us, we're a family business focused on digital marketing with a strong emphasis on video production. This past week, we were contracted to perform 2 real estate video home tours, one at 1.2 million and a second at 200,000. Both had their own challenges, yet are basically the same workflow and equipment. In this video, we will cover our specific camera packages, how we plan out and handle each kind of shot, camera settings and environmental factors to look out for, gimbals, sliders, e-ridables, and we'll finish up with our post-production workflow and strategy. We have a lot to cover, so stay with us as we take you behind the feast.
So the first thing you want to think about when you're shooting a home tour is what camera you're using. We use an A7S Mark II with an Atomos Shogun Inferno with a 16 to 28 millimeter lens. We also use a 17 to 35 millimeter lens, mostly because it actually has threads for ND filters. When you're picking out your camera, I would say the big thing you'd want to look for is you want to go with a camera that has full frame. You can try to do it with a Micro Four Thirds or Super 35 sensor, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to see the entire room and to get all those angles, and I think that you're going to be fighting or buried in corners if you're trying to go with the smaller sensors. Definitely I recommend full frame if you can. If not, go with the widest lens possible, because right now we shoot with full frame and wide angle lenses, and sometimes rooms are still too small for us. So those are the 2 things I would recommend in your camera package.
In our pre-planning phone call with the agent, we usually get an idea of square footage, inside and outside amenities, and any special features the agent wants us to focus on. This helps us get an idea of what the shoot will be like and how to strategize our movements. We also take time to emphasize the importance of a clean, staged property ready for shooting. Once we're at the property, we're usually met by the agent and we do a walkthrough of the property, room by room, to make sure we are aware of any issues or special instructions. This is a great time to finalize our strategy, decide on specific shots and equipment, and who goes where first. We want to stay out of each other's shots, so we separate and take different areas of the house and work our way through in an organized fashion. It's also important to make sure the vehicles are removed, giving us a clear shot of the front of the property, especially our colorful DFS van. We also ask that the sellers not be at the property during the shot so they don't get in the way of the production. Same rules apply for pets.
Now that you've picked out your camera for the home tour, you want to figure out what your camera settings are. You generally want to shoot at the highest resolution you can with the highest frame rate that you can. Now with the A7S Mark II, that is 4K 30 FPS. You can do 1080p at 60 frames a second, but we prefer to shoot 4K. Your shutter is twice your frames per second, and your ISO is generally as low as it can be, and aperture is just dependent on how you want the shot to look based on exposure or what depth of field you want. I also recommend shooting in log, which is a flat profile, gives you more dynamic range and color to work with later. When you're shooting a home tour, you want the house to be as bright and as nice as possible, but you also want to be able to try to expose for the windows outside. Sometimes it's impossible, but sometimes if that's what the highlight of the room is, you're going to want to have that. You don't want it to just be a blown out void right out the window. And something that really helps me shoot in log and expose for log is the Atomos Shogun Inferno. It has false color, it has focus peaking, it has everything I need to let me see, but also it allows me to apply a LUT to my footage while I'm shooting, so that way I can see how it will look color corrected later. And if I want to bypass the extra time of color grading you have to do afterwards when you shoot log, I can just tell it to burn the LUT in, and I have footage right out of camera, already looks amazing. And that's something you definitely get with the Atomos Shogun Inferno. I also recommend it just for shooting in ProRes because it's much easier in the editing system. It's a codec with less compression, and it's just overall a joy to work with. So after you have your camera settings all set up, you got to figure out how your camera is going to move through the space. Right now we're talking about gimbals. And one of my favorite additions to our Digital Feast arsenal here is the Ronin-SC. It's the little brother to the Ronin-S. This thing is lightweight. It has replaced our crane, it has replaced our glide cam. I think it could replace our slider, honestly. You can get any shot you want with it. You can get a crane shot, you can get a slide shot, and you can just traverse the territory and show how each room relates to each other. You can go from the kitchen into the living room. You can go from the hallway into the bedroom. And that way the viewer really gets an idea of what it's like to move through this house. And that's what you're trying to sell the viewer at the end of the day. Some specific things about this gimbal is I love that it has the focus knob right here, so I can just control my focus. I don't have to take my hand off and be doing it like this like I would with the Glide Cam. I can be moving and pulling focus at the same time. I can attach a monitor right here like I always do and be recording right to my Atomos with no issues. And I can get low floor shots. I can get as high as I want. There's a thumbstick controller right here too, so I can pick out my angles, be controlling the camera while I'm moving. It is the ultimate filmmaker's tool in any scenario, but in home tours, it is essential.
I love the different gimbal choices and methods we use to film, but I also love the symmetric, stable, horizontal effect of a good slide shot. Using foreground and background, you can create beautiful shots. We make sure to get 2 angles of each room as a stable primary or backup shot. Mixing both gimbal shots and slide shots makes the video more interesting and fun. I always found a good slide shot at the right time brings a calming stability to the production. It is important, however, not to overuse it. Breaking up the shots with the gimbal handheld shots or a gimbal e-rideable, in our opinion, is what makes it a great home tour.
The next tools I'm going to recommend are electric rideables. Things like the Segway, like the Onewheel, and let me say, you're going to get a lot of weird looks when you start using these, but your footage will speak for itself. When you shoot on the Segway or you shoot in the Onewheel, it'll allow you to get shots that almost look like you had a crane coming out of a car, or that you somehow got a drone inside and were flying around. Like, it just looks like you're hovering through space. So when it comes to the Onewheel, I think that is a great outside tool. You can ride on grass, you can ride on sidewalk. No matter how bumpy the ground is, the Onewheel just takes all of it and you'll cruise by smoothly. I generally use these for exterior shots, coming up the driveway, coming down the road in front of the house, or if the homeowner allows me, I'll ride on the grass too. Get some nice shots of the house all the way around from any angle. And that's where the Onewheel is exceptional.
The Onewheel revolutionized what we could do with our Ronin-SC. Once we saw how great the shots looked, we looked into how we could reproduce those shots indoors.
And that's where the Segway came in, which moves around like a tank. You can stop, turn 360, and move very slowly through space. I wouldn't take the Onewheel inside of an expensive house, but I'll ride the Segway around all day. And the footage is amazing. You can go down a hallway, you can come in and out of a room, you can really show how the space in the house relates to each other and show what it's like to actually walk through this house. And I find that gives a more honest view of the house, but it also just gives a shot that you're just gonna marvel at later. It will look so unbelievably smooth, especially if you shot it in slow motion. It'll look like you had a machine crane in there, when really you're just a guy or girl riding on a Segway.
We have shot on factory floors, schools, university, and homes. The movement, along with the controlled, stabilized shots from the Ronin, is just incredible and definitely affordable for most filmmakers.
Once you've shot your home tour, now it's time to bring it into the editing room. Now, if you shot in log, you want to color grade that footage immediately. I recommend color grading all your footage. When it comes to client work, they might want you to change some shots around and you want to be flexible about that. So if you color graded all the footage, it's just a drag and drop, swap it out. Because in the past I've had to swap footage, color correct it again, and then you're in and out of the color correcting software, and it just takes too much time. The next step is you want to focus on the music. Now, the music will set the pace and the mood of your edit. You want your music to really reflect the house and also add, not take away from it. So that means if the house had more of a techie feel to it, I like to pick more of a techie track. But if it's like a cabin out in the trees, I might go for more of a kind of a country sounding track. But you want the house and the music to feel very congruent in how they are speaking to the viewer. Once you have your music selected, let your music determine the pacing. Cut to the beat. That'll make your cuts less perceivable, and it will even have that cool effect of when your music picks up, it'll always be when you're cutting to the next room. So that way it'll almost be like this really cool reveal for the audience. It'll help keep your edit from dragging. As you're cutting to the beat, you want to think about the path you're taking through the house. I try to think of it like a realtor walking a potential buyer through the house. You start on the outside in the front yard. I generally try to keep the backyard till the end. You look at the front of the house, a few shots there, and then you go into the house and you just try to figure out your path through the house to show off all the rooms. touch all the bases. Generally want to spend more time in the kitchen, more time in the master bedroom. You want to show off the bathrooms if they have been designed really well. Make sure you're showing off all the key points. At the end of the day, every house has a story and you're the one to tell it.
Well, that's a wrap for this show. If you'd like to see the actual finished home tours featured in this video, we'll link those below. If you like this content, please click the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified when we upload next. If you have any questions or ideas for future content, leave them in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. We appreciate you and the time you spent with us. See you on the next shoot.